there, warm welcome. You watching Blueprint Explosive Exclusive and I'm Meghna. Well, tonight we are going to take a look at elections dictatorship style. Here, your vote is transparent. They know who you voted for and your ballot can be tracked all the way to your home. And abstaining is not an option because if you don't vote, it is sedition. Let's take you inside the world's most forced elections in North Korea under Kim Jong Un. But there is a twist in the tale. Despite the fact that there are no opponents, dictator Kim Jong Un failed to hit Bullseye. That's the supreme leader. He may not be supreme anymore. Sample this. Well, the voter turnout was 99.97%. Almost the entire country, 99.99%, almost the entire country had showed up. After abstaining is going to be treason. However, only 99.93 voted yes for the dictator. This is the voter turnout. This is the number of people who voted for the dictator. But this is the interesting statistic, 0.07% who voted no for the dictator. Somewhere in that sea of approvals, there was a handful of ballots who quietly said, maybe no. Well, the brave 0.7% who voted no against Kim Jong Un, the question is, will they face retribution? Well, I guess we may never know. In most democracies, analysts debate swing votes and margins of error. Here, the suspense is quite different. Not who won. That part was never in doubt. The real mystery, who exactly makes up the world's most famous and brave 0.7% of those who voted no. So do these numbers mean that Kim Jong Un is no longer supreme? His closest competition certainly seems to be outperforming him. Well, the first place is none other than Saddam Hussein. He's got an approval rating when he contested elections of 100%. Comes in second place is none other than Xi Jinping of China. When he contested, the approval rating for him was 99.98%. And Kim Jong Un, the poor dictator of North Korea, comes in only third place because he got 99.93% approval rating, coming in third. Well, elections were held in North Korea. It may look familiar on paper, but the reality is very different from a democracy. With only one candidate per district and heavy pressure to comply, voting becomes less about choice and more about control. In this system, the ballot isn't just a vote, it's a signal of loyalty. Let's tell you, there are no opponents in this. Essentially, there's only one candidate per district. Then you have the ballot, which becomes a tracker for you. Because at the end of it, there are separate booths if you want to go and say no, and you are going to be very closely inspected by the electoral officers while you are voting. So you can call it transparent voting because everyone knows whom you voted for. And voting no, and this is the interesting bit, some sources are saying that voting no is tantamount to treason because disapproval means disloyalty towards the Kim dynasty. And what happens when you abstain in this election, the dictatorship style? Well, abstaining from voting is also sedition. This is forced participation of every voter who is of voting age. Voting means loyalty test. Essentially, you must turn up to vote so that you can show that you are loyal to not just the dictator, but also to the entire Kim dynasty. If the outcome is precedented, then why hold polls if you already know what's going to happen? Well, according to experts, it's got a very practical purpose for the government. A census of the population. The law forces people to vote, so it gives the government an informal census of every citizen. And it helps them even track those who may have defected. Second reason, because this is seen as a display of loyalty, the act of voting publicly demonstrates national unity for them, for the government officials to the Kim family. Also, this is institutionalization of the government. When they meet on March 22nd, the newly elected SPA, which is the Supreme Parliamentary Assembly, they're going to be ratifying the government's state policies. And fourth, the Assembly is going to enact a substantial change to the Constitution, is what sources are telling us, that can potentially declare South Korea to be a hostile nation. There you have it. That's why they actually have these elections. But also, let's tell you how in a classic internet fashion, memes have erupted all over about the 0.07% of the people who voiced dissent against Kim Jong Un. They have to sleep with one eye open. Why? Well, let's show you these. For example, you have this one coming in. It says, where every bombing, you've reached each other, but you are not invited. This is essentially about how Kim Jong Un is crying because everyone's bombing everyone, but Kim Jong Un is not part of the big party which is happening as per this meme when it comes to World War III. Then you have this one, Kim Jong Un, who was speaking, saying that you hear that, fire back immediately. No, sir, it's just thunder, it's not missile. That he's trigger happy and ready to fire at every little sound that he hears. Then you have another one. You have Kim Jong Un there hugging someone who seems to be a general, saying, Kim Jong Un, when one missile is mistakenly landing in North Korea, he's ecstatic because now he gets reason to jump into the war. Then you have this one which says, Sir, 4 दिन हो गए, एक भी मिसाइल नहीं आया हमारे एरिया में, to which Kim Jong Un is seen telling one of his generals, जब तक बोलूं ना, उठना भी मत, check करते रहना. That be ready, any minute a missile comes, we must fire back and then retaliate. Then you have Kim Jong Un wiping his tears, saying when you have the best toys, but no one calls you to play the game because he's not invited to what many are calling the World War III. Yes, you're talking about the Iran war. So these are the memes which are doing the round. There are, of course, memes of the 0.07% who did not turn up for the party of Kim Jong Un, who failed the loyalty test to him. You have this picture where you have an actor saying, Acha chalta hu, dua mein yaad rakhna, saying Kim Jong Un wins North Korea's parliamentary elections with 99.93% of the vote. The remaining 0.07% essentially saying, Acha ab ja raha hu, yaad rakhna. Essentially, this is harakiri, that this is political suicide for all those who voted no for a dictator. Then you have others also. Those 0.07% right now, well, lying in a coffin. Well, those are the kind of dark humor which is doing the rounds right now on social media about the, many are calling it brave 0.07% who voted no for Kim Jong Un. Meanwhile, there are more people who seem to be fleeing North Korea each year in an effort to escape Kim Jong Un's regime. Many make their way to South Korea, while others attempt to reach the West via China, where they must tread very carefully given China's close relationship with Pyongyang as well. Let's tell you how in 2025 there were as many as 223 defectors. But what's been the trend so far? Let's take you back another year. 2024, there were 223 defectors which were recorded. In 2023, 96. There you have it. The year before that, the year even before that, there were 67 defectors in 2020. In 2021, it was 63. 2020, it was 229 defectors. So all of this list of defectors also gets very clear when they have their voting. Now, let's also tell you about what could possibly be the reason behind defections from North Korea. If they are going to South Korea, what's happening there? Well, is South Korea's propaganda against North Korea really helping and suddenly working out? Let's tell you about the loudspeaker war between the North and the South Koreas, which is a long-standing psychological campaign along the along the Korean demilitarized zone, which dates all the way back to World War. In fact, it was involving using propaganda tools, news, and even K-pop now to influence minds across the border, which both of them have employed from time to time. They first employed after the Korean War and then formalized in 1960s. These broadcasts have been switching on and off depending on if the tension was on or off. They were silenced during 2004 during a rare diplomatic thaw, but that didn't last too long. It returned again 11 years later in 2015 after a landmine blast which injured South Korean soldiers. Another breakthrough came in 2018 where both the Koreas dismantled their speakers. This is the speaker which they were blaring out things about each other. But in 2024, after North Korea sent trash-filled balloons across the border to South Korea, you had Seoul who switched on the broadcast again. However, by 2025, South Korea once again pulled back, removing speakers in a fresh attempt to ease the tensions following a change in South Korean administration. Meanwhile,